in Germany.
Oh, yeah. I guess he prefers our earlier stuff. You know, the only thing he and I see eye to eye on is hair shapes. Because we have the same stylist.
Same stylist?
Yes. We just walk in, we yell, "You have 3 seconds, go!"
Time now to talk about the world in 20. I love Saturday Night Live. It's really. Anyhow, the 30th edition of The Economist's annual compilation of predictions for the year ahead is out now. And joining us now, executive editor of The Economist, Daniel Franklin. Very good to have you on board this morning. You have predictions.
You have predictions. I'm wondering if what we saw yesterday in France, though, with the defeat of the Nationalist Party, doesn't serve as possibly a predictor to what will happen in this country in 2016. A lot of noise from the far right, from nationalists, and then a whimper at the end of the day.
I think it could be, because what you had is the anti-populist parties pulling together, in some cases the socialists standing down and letting the centre-right have a free run at the National Front and winning in every single case. So that was quite stunning. It's also, I think, possibly a precursor of what you get in 2017 in the French presidential election, when Marine Le Pen could well be the candidate. But you're going to hear a lot about her, come what may, in the year ahead.
So you say the year can be summed up in 3 words: woes, women, and wins. Let's start with women. You say they'll be at the heart of many of the biggest decisions of 2016.
Yes, absolutely. Well, obviously, here in America, we're about to have the interest rate decision from the Federal Reserve. So Janet Yellen is going to be someone who, and what happens after that is going to be crucial, how far and how fast interest rates rise. So everybody looking to Yellen. Hillary Clinton is certainly the candidate to beat in the election here. And then Angela Merkel in Europe is the absolute central figure on the migrant question and much else besides.
Isn't that remarkable? Central figures in American politics and in Europe and in finance.
And you could go on. In Asia, you have Aung San Suu Kyi. You have possibly 2 new women presidents in Asia, in Taiwan and the Philippines.
What happens if oil prices continue to plunge? Social programs in Saudi Arabia that the kingdom pays for out of oil revenue, their revenue dwindles. What's the prognosis there? Well,
the longer that goes on, the more strain it puts Saudi Arabia and other oil-producing countries under, clearly. But it also is a big stimulus. I mean, in Europe, a big oil importer, we benefit from cheaper oil. And the European economy needs all the stimulus it can get. So it's a very mixed picture if oil keeps going down.
But you talk about Middle East woes. How much worse can it get?
Well, I think it can carry on being pretty bad, and we've been at the forefront in Europe of the migrant influx, and I expect that will continue, because the sources of what is pushing people to seek refuge in Europe is not going away. So I would expect many, many more hundreds of thousands of people to be coming Europe by putting incredible strain on the politics of Europe.
So you have guest contributors helping sort of with these predictions. You hear from Christine Lagarde, the CEO of Uber, about the sharing economy. Also, Roger Goodell has some.
Well, it's Super Bowl 50, so it's a landmark, big sporting year in 2016.
Big challenges
the Olympics
for the NFL.
As well. Big challenges for the NFL, but interestingly also the NFL going global increasingly as it looks to the future. Talking about games, regular season games outside the United States.
What's going to be the big football, and by football I mean really football, story of the year?
You mean proper football?
Proper football, what the rest of the world would call football.
Well, there's the France, in France there's the Euro 2016.
I know, but who's going to be the big story in that?
And I think actually, first of all, just safety will be the big story, because after what happened with international games being postponed in Europe in the wake of the Paris attacks, I think just that tournament will be powerful if it goes off without incident. But then I think it'll be, of course, I would have to say that England are going to triumph. But
as they always do.
They always do, yes.
All right.
Actually, if you define always, it's 1966.
1966, yes.
They always do. All right, well, Daniel, thank you so much for being with us.
The Economist's World in 2016 is out now. Daniel Franklin, thank you very much.
And by the way, will Mourinho still be running Chelsea at the end of 2016.
You know, they're right near the drop zone at the moment, so unless he gets out pretty quickly, I think he will have to leave.
On that note,
sacked.
On that note, if it's way too early, Joe, what time is it?
It is Morning Joe, but stick around. MSNBC Live is coming up next.
Thanks, and guys. Michael Warren now. So, Michael, so first of all, he does a great Smithers. I'm just going to say that was pretty good.
Montgomery Burns, yes.
Montgomery Burns, yes.
Release the hound.
Oh my gosh, that's pretty good. It's not bad.
Yeah, it's pretty good. I mean, it wasn't the best.
Not that great. Yeah. So let me ask you, Michael. Around the table, we're starting to think this is looking more like a two-person race than it has in 6 months. What's it look like to you?
Well, if we're looking at Iowa, it's increasingly becoming a two-person race. But we have to think that it was a two-person race before Ted Cruz, went to the top. Remember, it was Trump and Carson, and everybody else was kind of below. So Cruz has really replaced Carson. I think has got a lot longer staying power. And I think Ted Cruz being at the top in Iowa really just goes to show you how well positioned he is for the nomination. I think Donald Trump has really sort of thrown everything off in New Hampshire. You've got all the establishment candidates there kind of jockeying for positions. So Ted Cruz being number one against Donald Trump, I really think that you guys were talking about earlier, the GOP establishment has really got to be looking at Cruz and thinking he's a sort of a better option than going with this maniac Donald Trump.
Yeah, we saw the maniac tweet, Mark Halpern.
Do your readers and the people in the Weekly Standard orbit, do you think they're all perfectly happy with Ted Cruz at the nominee, or would they feel threatened by that and want to find an alternative?
We've run a few of these Weekly Standard straw polls, and we've mostly got Marco Rubio, Ted Cruz. They kind of percolate to the top. There's really not a lot of interest among our readers in Donald Trump long term. And I think that's something important to remember about Donald Trump's support. It doesn't really come from conservative or traditional conservative voters. It's more that middle of the road, people who have voted for Democrats maybe in the past. I mean, that's where Trump does well. But, I mean, he also has this ceiling. I don't think he's really broken out of Donald Trump, that is. And Ted Cruz, I think, is looking more and more electable in a general election. Those NBC poll numbers, I think, just go to show that, when conservatives start going to the polls in Iowa, New Hampshire, South Carolina, particularly those SEC primary states, they're going to be thinking about, can we beat Hillary? And Donald Trump being down 10 points, I think, is going to make things a lot more clearer once we, actually start seeing people vote and have to actually make a decision. So I don't think conservatives are scared of Donald Trump. Certainly not our readers. Excuse me, of Ted Cruz. They love Ted Cruz.
Yeah, it's interesting. Mike Barnacle, Frank Bruni had a column this weekend talking about Ted Cruz, and actually says in the column, or this is a while back, actually says in the column what I've heard from people who've worked for Ted Cruz before, which is, again, goes to the likability factor. He's clearly brilliant. But when you talk to people who've worked with him at various stages of his career, they dislike him. No, scratch that. They loathe him.
Well, I think,
and I've heard that from so many people that worked with him in the Bush.
I think Frank Bruni had a quote in that piece from Ted Cruz's college roommate in freshman year, who, when asked about Ted Cruz as president, said, "Pick anybody else out of a phone book." And wow. I'd rather have that person.
Yeah, he usually takes pride in being abrasive, as if the person's tally of detractors measures his fearlessness, not his obnoxiousness. Do you hire this applicant? No way. And that's why voters should be wary of Ted Cruz. But when you have Donald Trump saying this guy's personality can be abrasive at times, I'm sorry, it's a little different than Ben Carson saying that.
One of the most important people in this race now is Heidi Cruz. She's going to step forward as a surrogate to try to combat the notion that he's not likable.
And more audio tapes to come, according to Politico. So, Michael
Warren,
more
audio tapes of him doing what?
Sort of shifting around a little bit.
Speaking to donors in Manhattan, where Manhattan Ted is different than Texas Ted.
Yeah. Depends on the audience.
Goodness. Up next, stocks are poised to open in negative territory this morning. We'll talk to Sarah Issa next.
32 past the hour, the Cruz campaign is using statisticians and behavioral psychologists to micro-target voters. The Washington Post reports that they essentially built their own version of a Myers-Briggs test. And field operatives use a custom iPhone app to determine whether people they meet might be a relaxed leader, a temperamental conservative, a true believer, or even a stoic traditionalist. And that helps determine the campaign's approach on everything from face-to-face interactions to the tone of personalized email blasts.
It's fascinating. If you look at the list, temperamental conservative, if they know they have a temperamental conservative, the article says they talk guns. If they have a stoic traditionalist, they talk Obamacare, I believe they said it was. I mean, they talk issues and they take an approach based on their personality characteristics.
Isn't there, though, an inherent contradiction in that approach? I mean, candidates who are always talking disapprovingly of federal government intrusion, privacy rights, and this is it's skillful, but it's scary.
For a libertarian/conservative to be doing this is ironic.
Joining us now. Oh, go ahead.
Mark, it's voluntary, and it's the government. It's not the government, so it's different.
It is.
Is it voluntary? I don't know that it's voluntary. These people don't sit down
most of people are opting in.
They get big data, though. Right?
A lot of it is gleaned from their Facebook pages.
It's big data and magazine subscriptions and shows that they watch and stuff. They follow them around on Google and then get information, right?
It's not the government, it's the private sector.
Oh, so it's okay?
Different.
Okay. Have you got any calls for any moving companies lately?
Yeah, about 200 actually.
Yeah.
Thank you, because I'm helping somebody move. And I looked at a property for this person.
Did a search on
Google. And I've got 200 phone calls from moving companies now because I actually touched the site, I opened it on my phone. They took my phone number, my private phone number, and now 250 moving companies have called me every 15 minutes for several days straight.
Really unbelievable.
Across the country. Yeah, that was not actually voluntary. That was not voluntary.
It's not voluntary, Mark Halpern.
Did Ted Cruz call you?
Ted Cruz did not call me.
That is next. Join us now from Washington, staff writer at the Weekly Standard, Michael Warren, and from Las Vegas, MSNBC political consultant Casey Hunt. Now, Casey, we've been talking about this string of new polls showing Ted Cruz surging in Iowa. You've been following closely on the trail. How do you explain the rise?
Hey guys, well, we're all very familiar with that fiery Ted Cruz, who's a member of the Senate involved in the government shutdown, maybe not Mitch McConnell's best friend. But I gotta tell you, I've been following him on the campaign trail, and it's pretty clear that he's trying to show voters a very different side of himself.
If you want someone to grab a beer with, I may not be that guy.
Ted Cruz doesn't exactly have a reputation for being warm and fuzzy.
We will carpet bomb them into oblivion.
But on the campaign trail, Cruz has sometimes been showing, if not quite a softer side, then at least a lighter one.
Inconceivable!
The Princess Bride is a cult classic, and it's one of Cruz's favorites. So when an Iowa pastor asked, he was more than happy to demonstrate.
So, what is it you have that's so worth living for?
What you got here that's worth living for?
True love.
True love.
Liar!
Liar! Get back, witch!
Shut up, witch!
Ever since Prince Humperdinck fired him.
I told you not to say that name.
Humperdinck!
Humperdinck! I can't hear you!
Cruz also loves using Hollywood lines.
Let me quote the movie Jerry Maguire.
You had me at hello.
You had me at hello.
And he has a knack for impersonations.
Smithers, release the hounds. Every time I get out.
Just when I thought I was out.
They keep pulling me back in.
They pull me back in.
There are new signs that this Ted Cruz is pulling voters in. Now 2 polls have him leading the entire field in Iowa.
If I don't win, I've wasted my time.
Cruz had been careful not to go after Trump in public, but he was recently caught on tape questioning Trump's judgment.
People are looking for who is prepared to be a commander-in-chief, who understands the threats we face. Who am I comfortable having their finger on the button? Now, that's a question of strength, but it's also a question of judgment.
The question is how the cheerful campaign trail version of Ted Cruz will react to the new onslaught from the national frontrunner.
You look at the way he's dealt with the Senate, where he goes in there like a, frankly, like a little bit of a maniac. You're never going to get things done that way.
Cruz's team absolutely knows that if they have one hurdle they have to get over here, it's convincing voters that his personality is a little bit warmer, is a little bit more welcoming. They didn't love when he got up on that debate stage and said he wasn't somebody that you would want to have a beer with. So when I went door to door over the weekend with Iowa voters, that's what I heard too. There were a lot of people who were very open potentially to voting for him. They had him on their list, but they said, you know, I don't know. There's just something about his persona. So that's what they're going to have to work on as they try to convert these poll numbers into a victory, guys.
All right.
Very interesting. I look forward to getting her states of play going because she talks to people and we got a real sense of their thinking. Casey, thank you.